Here is your king's scepter, and here is your kingdom. With the scorpion, the cobra, and the lizard for subjects. Free them if you will. Leave the Hebrews to me. Give this prince of Israel 1 day's ration of bread and water.
1 day's ration? It'll take many days to cross this wilderness, if he can cross it all.
I commend you to your Hebrew God, who has no name. If you die, it will be by his hand, not by mine. Farewell, my one-time brother.
Before we get started, I need to at least acknowledge what you all are thinking. With this Easter special episode, I decided to break my own rule, knowing full well that this is the first and probably only time I will ever review a color film on this show. However, I do have a few good reasons why I'm doing this. One, this is actually a remake not only of a previous Ten Commandments that was made in black and white, it is also a remake of a previous movie by the same director, Cecil B. DeMille. Two, considering this is the admittedly belated episode focused on Easter, and this film was so well associated with the holiday, I felt it would be alright to cheat. Finally, I simply love this film. It is one of the finest examples of classic, epic Hollywood filmmaking. So yes, the Ten Commandments is an adaptation of the story of the Hebrew prophet Moses from the book of Exodus, as he freed his people from the very family he was raised by as the Prince of Egypt. The film is told on the grandest scale Hollywood could provide in the 1950s, and in many ways has never been able to be done again, boasting an all-star cast, extravagant sets, and remarkable special effects for the time. It creates a truly humbling experience of a film. Needing no introduction, the film is an adaptation of one of the most iconic stories in all of Christianity and Judaism, though a few things are changed or left out for the understandable reason of making it more cinematic. Baby Moses is saved by his mother when the Pharaoh of Egypt learns of the prophecy that a Hebrew child will rise up and free his enslaved people. The child ends up in the possession of Princess Bithyia and is raised to be the next Pharaoh. In later years he learns of what he truly is, and after being banished from his home, goes on a journey to fulfill his destiny. He then faces his own brother Ramesses and succeeds in saving his people. Finally, the film comes to a close with Moses returning to his people with the titular Ten Commandments and leading them to the land of Canaan. There are a few things that should be noted. Yes, the acting borders on the melodramatic at several moments, and this can easily be off-putting for a casual viewer, if the length of the film hasn't already done that. That said, these rather over-the-top performances come from some of the most remarkable actors of that time. Charlton Heston, who I personally consider to be one of my heroes, Yul Brynner, Vincent Price, Sir Hedrick Hardwicke, and Yvonne De Carlo. All these actors give an air of sincerity to the performance that otherwise would have just been considered bad acting. One of the performances that should be noted is Edward G. Robinson as Dathan. In all of the melodramatic acting, Robinson gives a surprisingly subtle performance. This is especially interesting when you realize he's most noted for his gangster roles. His subdued deliveries of his lines leave him to be one of the most unsung joys that can be found in this film. All in all, the acting is just part of the style. It's not that it brings down the film, rather it helps to give the film its identity. However, its acting is by far not what the film is remembered for. Its glorious sets and noteworthy special effects is what gave the film the right to designate itself as an epic film. From the staff becoming a snake to the most iconic scene of the parting of the Red Sea, The vast cinematography, along with the staggering sets, gives a true feeling that you have been taken to another land. The film truly makes you feel like you've been taken back to the biblical era. The best example I can think of to show off the true beauty of the film is the scene of Moses' banishment, which takes place at the Egyptian palace.
I am not this deliverer you fear. It would take more than a man to lead the slaves from bondage. It would take a god. But if I could free them, I would.
What has turned you against me? From the time my sister brought you to the court, I loved you, reared you, set you before my own son. Because I saw in you a worth and a greatness above other men.
No son could have more love for you than I.
Then why are you forcing me to destroy you? What evil has done this to you?
The evil that men should turn their brothers into beasts of burden, to slave and suffer in dumb anguish, to be stripped of spirit and hope and faith only because they are of another race, another creed. If there is a God, he did not mean this to be so. What I have done, I was compelled to do.
So be it.
It seems cliché to say what amazing things directors could do without CGI during this era, but it's simply a true statement. Cecil B. DeMille had the right vision and talent to bring a true experience of a film. This is an example of what filmmaking meant to Hollywood at the time. Think about how many people were used in this project, and how much time and effort was put into making this film look as amazing as it does. I mentioned back in my first review of Casablanca that Raiders of the Lost Ark was influenced by that film and this one. Steven Spielberg seemed to be influenced by the effects and the landscape of Ten Commandments, as the desert scenes of Raiders remind me heavily of the scenes in Commandments. Considering the plot of Raiders involves a search for the Ark of the Covenant, it would seem logical that they would share so many aesthetic similarities. This seems especially true when you realize Spielberg was a producer on The Prince of Egypt. Another film you may be surprised to notice similarities with the Ten Commandments is actually the adaptation of the Marvel comic book Thor. The films share a lot of story elements. A royal son is banished from his home. He eventually rises up and faces his evil brother who is ascended to the throne. That's admittedly an oversimplification of both stories, but it is fun to think about. Plus, knowing Kenneth Branagh, I wouldn't be surprised if he had something like that in mind. I've always loved the feel of classic Hollywood movies. That sense of grand adventure you get from the bombastic storytelling makes these kinds of films timeless. Is Ten Commandments silly in some areas? Absolutely. But that's part of the charm. It was a different time when this film came out. Film was truly an escapism for people going to the movies. Granted, this came out post-Depression when movies were really made for taking people away from their problems, but the fact still remains. This and many other films were able to enchant people with what they were able to do, making them believe anything is possible. The Ten Commandments is a film that did and still continues to fill people with hope.
This will still be so. I will never let your